Well,
good morning, friends, and welcome to this rather sunny June day. Today we have an interesting discussion from
Sorry. I'm very sorry, everybody.
what's up, Patsy? Oh, you got something going on. Right.
from the pen of David Saunders, who has a talk for us today, which is resilient energy.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Opportunity.
not quite so much pen as fevered fingers and crazy mind, but we'll see where we get to. And this is not. I'm guilty of recycling something here. Maybe no bad thing. I'm picking up on something that has happened since the last talk, and I'm going to show a couple of slides from the past where I thought things were building up, and then talk about what's been happening since. Because so if I can, as usual, manipulate technology and make it work. Here we go. So the title, as Ray was saying, the title is Now. Have you, oh, okay, that's not, I think, what I wanted to show. I wanted to, right. Have you just got the one picture, Resilient Energy and Opportunity there? Okay, good. So that's the title of the talk. And even this first screen is stolen from somebody else. But it's stolen from my friend Iris Partridge, and she's not going to mind that I did it, because some of the slides that I'm going to show are from an event that we did together about resilient hubs. So,
David, you might want to know that you're also exhibiting the next lot of slides down the side.
Oh, okay. Right. So
you might want to, yeah.
So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do. Right, I've got that there. I'm going to have another go. I'm going to come back in, and if I'm really clever, I'll even knock this piece out of the show. Edit it out. So are we just on the slide picture now? Great, lovely. Thank you. Thank you for nodding. Oh, right. It now even shows for the first seconds, it shows a little picture of your screen sharing and showing what you're sharing. So if you're if you're up to speed, you can see what's going on. If you're me, you're sort of a bit bewildered because there's too much going on. Anyway, resilient energy and opportunity. Obviously, we're going to have to explain this, and I'll get to that. So, at the start of the last talk, which was Age of Energy Abundance, only on the 10th of February, I was saying that we're all these talks I've given over the last few years. Patty, you've just joined us with a huge noise. If you could mute yourself, that would be great. Lovely. Feel free to make noise and come in whenever you want to. You're on your bicycle. You're probably out cycling around the world or something. God, okay. Well, whatever it is, it's lovely to see you, Hattie. And anything that you don't pick up right now, you can pick up later on replay. Don't look at the screen while you're cycling. Cycle carefully. Okay, so we've done a few talks about energy, and I've been sort of watching what's happening with community energy as we've been living out lockdown and COVID and all the rest of it, in the hope that when we come out of it, we're going to do something wonderful to tackle climate change. And about the turn of the year, I started to think that things were speeding up. So I've got things to report that say that's absolutely true. Things are happening quite quickly now. But to go back, this is my life in a nutshell. From 1968 to 2011, I was involved in the computer industry one way or another, as we went from mainframe computers to microcomputers. I went to live in Silicon Valley, and I came back at a tipping point. And the tipping point then was when you could buy an IBM personal computer or a Macintosh And previously, the very first personal computers, they'd been used for just one thing, for word processing, or for spreadsheets, or for databases. And if you wanted to do all three, you might have needed 3 computers. But suddenly you were able to buy Microsoft Office, which did database and spreadsheet and presentation graphics and word processing, all on the same computer, and you could copy from one to the other, and you could even share it between a Macintosh and an IBM PC. And that was the start of a revolution. Instead of having a specific job that you were a stenographer or an accountant, you could have a business and you could do all those different things on your own computer. And I came back from America, from Silicon Valley, with a Macintosh and Microsoft Office to start in this new world where people could do their own computing. And there was 10 years while we were getting ourselves connected with the internet and all of that, and Wi-Fi was coming out. And then there was 10 years with this cascade of technology, putting the whole computer inside a slim screen on a desk. And then a moment came when the computers became so small that they and their storage disappeared inside things and transformed the thing fundamentally. And I have this sort of mental image of a Macintosh computer disappearing inside a phone, right? And becoming like a black hole. It just sucked other things in behind it, like cameras and GPS and all sorts of things. And the phone became this, gosh, it can do anything. And instead of, well, some people have computers and some people don't, everybody ended up with smartphones. And there was like this moment where I heard a story of somebody being in a slum in an African city and seeing the desperate poverty that there was there. And then they heard the ringtone of a mobile phone, right? And somebody got out their mobile phone. So even in a slum, we were in touch with the rest of the world. You could have, from there, you could have access to all the world's knowledge. Remarkable. And in Africa, they found ways of making phone charges much lower than they were in this country because people couldn't afford a lot. So, but they didn't have to support an old traditional network. They just built it from scratch with mobile phone towers. Brilliant. And this was one major revolution that's happened in the world in my lifetime that I've lived through, understood, been deeply part of. And and funnily enough, I made this slide back in 2011 before Steve Jobs died. So I've just shown this little picture of Steve Jobs ascending to the iCloud. Right, and I added that after Steve died as a little memorial to him. But this whole revolution culminated in a wonderful series of innovations from one of the great minds of the last and this century. And then what started was this solar revolution that you could see was coming. And it started off like mainframe computers, only big corporations had them. You only put a solar panel on a satellite because they were so incredibly expensive, but it was the only way to make electricity in space, right? You couldn't sort of put a petrol engine up there, no oxygen to burn. And then it gradually became cheaper and cheaper and got used in weirder and more and more places until you reached a point where the cost of solar energy was the same as the cost of energy from the grid. This was called grid parity. And then it became the same for energy generating companies. So even energy generating companies would start making solar energy. And then, as with computers, a whole ecosystem of technologies appeared and again, this slide was made in 2011, and I was saying by 2022 we will have all these things in place, right? So this is you're witnessing a prophecy presented historically. And now we're in 2023, and on the turn of 2023, I was saying all the things that we need are in place for an age of energy abundance, like we have with smartphones, right? An age of smart information everywhere. And you could go back and say, and even when we had the smartphones, now we've got we've had 10 years of smartphones being used in all kinds of ways and disrupting politics, disrupting lives in all sorts of interesting ways. And now a new wave is starting with artificial intelligence, and who knows where that's going to lead. I'd like to do an update on that as a talk sometime. I'm experimenting with AI at the moment and finding it very interesting and useful. Right, so at the beginning of this year, I was saying things are going to speed up. Oh, what's that from? 350 billion. Well, yes, that's the amount of money that our core, I don't know why I put that in. We'll skip over that politely. That's the amount of money that our cities are trying to raise for climate change at the moment. And this is, again, I did this graph. It's a logarithmic graph of the acceleration of solar. So I've got what looks like a straight line, but it's on a logarithmic scale. So every time it goes through a set of lines, it's multiplying by 10. So solar started quite small and then multiplied by 10 in about 7 years, and then multiplied by 10 again and again and again, to the point where last year, renewable energy was generating 1/10 of the world's energy. So one more times 10, and you've got renewable energy generating all the world's energy. And I've got this pointer wafting off. It doesn't go to 2050. Why not? Because if you put in the amount of electricity we generate in the world and the amount of energy we consume in the world, it crosses the line for the growth of solar in 2032, which seems impossibly soon, when you remember that our governments were getting together in Paris and saying, oh, we got to get to 100% renewable energy by 2050. Gosh, that's going to be hard. And I'm saying, well, no, if you actually look at what the technology curve is, we're going to get there before 2050. You governments don't understand accelerating change. Oh, and I noticed that I haven't updated this graph since 2017, and I thought, oh, I better bring it up to date. And I went off to Wikipedia's article, Growth of Photovoltaics, and it says graphs are temporary, unavailable due to technical issues. So I haven't brought it up to date from 2017, but I think I can assure you that it's pretty much still on that line. Solar is accelerating exponentially still. So in my last talk, I was going through kind of a history of things that have been happening in Bristol and just putting things on the map and showing that since 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, we've gradually built up momentum and things have been accelerating. It may not have felt like fast, but by the end, by 2022, we had this City Leap project going, and we were looking at raising hundreds of millions for renewable initiatives in Bristol. Can we do it? Big question. Because when we were Bristol, when we were Green Capital Year, we certainly didn't do. We spent about 7 million on more parties than renewables. But now we seem to be gearing up to do serious stuff. Like I said, we're looking to raise a lot of money across the country now, having raised 400 million to do something like to handle about 10% of Bristol's emissions. The core cities have got together and said, but seriously, how much do we really need to raise? And they're saying a lot, but turns out that when you ask, 350 billion, that's a fraction of what we've got in this country's pension funds. So we have got money salted away that we can use to invest in renewable energy for our country. And then I I was saying, well, from 2022 on, this year, next year, what's it going to look like? Let's assume we're going to be there by 2030. We'll have done most of what we need to do. Let's call that a 3-year block. In the 3 years before that, we need to do a big chunk of work. What are we going to be doing right now? And, you know, saying, and I interesting, I put education and resilience. And, you know, wasn't quite sure what that was going to mean. And I was saying, well, we need to organize our finances, and we need a shared vision in the community, and we need to do some pilot projects. And then I put up a whole load of basically bullet points or headings for the kind of pilot projects we need to do in transport, food. And I've got hubs and housing, heat and power. And then it's, and for one project, the Community Climate Action Project, I put forward the idea that our neighbourhood partnerships, meaning pretty much everybody in Bristol, it's one way of looking at our council wards, and it's another way of looking at our constituencies. Our constituencies have got a few neighbourhood partnerships in them, and neighbourhood partnerships have each got a few wards in them. And they're a kind of council grouping that isn't used much now. But when one thought about neighbourhood partnerships, like there's a strong one in Knoll West, like there's a strong one in Lockleys, like there's a strong one in Lawrence Weston, then there were strong community groups that were, you know, with great hubs. And my idea was you could use those hubs to roll out the solar energy in the neighborhoods, and you could bring community energy groups in to help community hubs. You know, okay, so fair enough, good idea, David. And, you know, bring in innovation centers like the Engine Shed and local money like Triodos, and have this all clustered around our One City Plan and the City Leap Partnership and so on. Pretty little picture, but the question was, you know, how do you bring all this together? And then just a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I heard from this lady, Iris Partridge, who said, I'm trying to put together a grouping of resilient hubs. And I immediately thought, wow, that's a great idea to do more. And she was saying it is built on the idea of warm places, right? Places that people can go to feel safe when it's cold and they can't afford heating. And she's saying it should be much more than that. But, you know, what happens in a community hub if the power goes down, right? They need to do more. It might even, like our Quaker meeting house in Champion Square, it might have solar panels and it might have a battery. But did you know that if the power goes out, the power will go out in Champion Square? The battery won't be working unless we add extra electrics to it. So it's like we need to do more to make our community centres more resilient in a time of rapid change. And Iris held a meeting, and I'm flicking through her slides. She talked through these over the course of half an hour. Let's just go back. She's explaining it in the context of climate emergency and the cost of living crisis and welcoming spaces and community spaces of safety, right? And then what more could we do? Resilient neighborhoods in the face of direct and indirect consequences of the climate emergency requires a holistic approach. And she started to think about this. And we brought together a few community hubs. And I say we, because when she started talking about it, we went, this is great. How can I help? And you'll see in a minute what I was suggesting. What will we do for our neighborhoods? And then she's saying, there's the everyday stuff, but you've got to be able to recover from disruption so that the community center continues to serve the community and acts as a stronghold for the community. So the community is held together and doesn't collapse. And she's got ideas, and she's thought through it a lot. And you can go slowly through that. You can pick this up later and have a look. But she's got some founding members. We're forming a CIC around it, and we're looking for partners of different sorts, Bristol Energy Network, the National Grid, the water companies, and so on. Who are the people you would bring together to help build disaster resilience, climate change resilience? We're forming a CIC at the moment, and it's got a purpose, so brought into being to create a network of community-based resilience hubs and other affiliated organizations which support local communities and businesses in their endeavor to be more resilient, and so on. Great. You bring in board members. Thank you. Any questions? And there was great discussion around this. And then after the discussion, I said, well, David, you've got some points. And I had. And I'm not sure whether I jumped straight into them. Yes, I do. Right. And I say, Ambition Lawrence Western are building a wind turbine in Avonmouth. And that's not it. I didn't have a picture of it at the time. So well, if you look at the bottom, at the picture, you can see that the steps going up to tiniest of doors. But that is a small wind turbine compared with what Ambition Lawrence Western are building, even though that's huge. This is the foundation that was going in December for this wind turbine in Avonmouth. And you can see it's massive, right? This is thousands of tons of concrete, a couple of thousand tons of concrete, and a few hundred tons of reinforced steel going to create this massive base, which is covered with earth, and then a tower's built on top of it. That's the tower going up with one of the two biggest cranes in the country, which they borrowed from Hinkley Point to put up this massive wind turbine tower. And you can see the crane, and you can see a bit crossing it. That's the first blade going on the wind turbine. And when I gave this talk, I hadn't got a picture of the fully formed turbine, but Charles Gamble sent me a picture, and that is their wind turbine adjacent to the waste to energy plant in Avonmouth, which you can also see. And what I was saying, this is what Ambition Lawrence Western have done. They built a 4 megawatt turbine, cost about $5.5 million. It's going to generate 12,000 megawatt hours of electricity a year. Well, how much is that? You can talk about it in terms of the emissions that it's saving. You can talk about it in terms of the number of households that it will support, replace, provide energy for potentially. You can also look at it in terms of income. They've got to pay off their $5.5 million, and the electricity typically is only going to be sold at wholesale price to the grid. It's very high voltage electricity. You can't connect homes directly to it. And they were expecting to get 4 pence a unit. You've been used to be paying 16 pence a unit, and now more than twice that. But they're only going to get 4 pence from their power purchase agreements. But still, it's nearly $500,000 a year. And that obviously pays off the cost in 10 years or so, far less than 20 or 30 years that the turbine will last. So it all looks lovely, except that since they started planning this, and even since they started building the turbine, we've had an energy crisis. And suddenly, instead of 4 pence a unit, they're getting 16 pence a unit, and they get $2 million a year. These figures are not exact, nothing like exact, but Lawrence Western as a community is suddenly finding itself in the possession, like fossil energy companies, of going to get windfall profits. Right, so the community is going to be nicely in the money. And this is one neighborhood partnership. And my point is, you're getting surpluses to the community. There's a downside, which is the electricity is not being supplied directly to households in Lawrence Western. So people aren't getting cheaper energy, but they will get surpluses that are going to support the community. And I was saying, well, can we do this in other parts of Bristol? And the answer is no. In most neighborhood partnerships, you can't put up a wind turbine, but you can put solar. There's roofs everywhere. So what would that look like? And, there's already £1 million roof going up, paid for by the community on a commercial building. So it's starting to happen at scale in Bristol. Bristol Energy Co-op is at work. And I've been involved with a project, Lockleys Love Solar, which had the idea to put a solar farm on people's roofs and share the energy, right? And this was, it was considered innovative, and we got a grant from a fund called the Next Generation Energy Fund of £100,000 to develop this project 2-3 years ago. And we got on with it, and we were coming along quite nicely. We were working with Bristol Energy Company, and then bang, we hit the wall. COVID came along. Bristol Energy Company was making money, but not enough, and the council sold it off. We lost a partner, and there were things that were marginal. The income, one of the problems was, our idea was you put solar on people's roofs for free. We raise the money, you don't pay for the solar, we put it on your roof, and you buy the electricity off your own roof, but you buy it at a discount. And you buy it through your energy company on your energy bill. So your energy bill looks like an ordinary energy bill, but it says, oh, by the way, you've got solar on your roof, it generated this much, you used this much, we're only charging you this for it, you saved this much. Isn't that cute? And this much you didn't use, and that went into the grid. And the problem was, we were thinking, what if we'll charge people 10 pence a unit for the solar from their roofs? But what they don't use, we'd only get 6 pence. So our projections for the business were based on we're not sure how many 10 pences we're going to get and how many 6 pences we're going to get. And if we don't get enough 6 pences, the numbers don't stack up. It's not quite good enough. And the other thing is, if you don't use the solar, we would love to sell it to your neighbor who hasn't got solar on their roof. Wouldn't that be great if the solar farm served everybody? And the answer was, yeah, great idea, but actually you are going to be paying grid charges even if the electricity is coming off one roof and being sold to your neighbor. And you'd be paying the same grid charges as if the electricity was being generated at Drax power station in Yorkshire and coming all the way to Bristol through the national transmission network. So we had things fighting against us. So that project died to death, and that was sad. But then since January, this is things speeding up, Good Energy said, well, we're in an energy crisis, energy is worth more, we're going to pay 10 pence a unit for the electricity you don't use. So suddenly we had a business model that says we get 10 pence if you use it, we get 10 pence if you don't. We've got a guaranteed income for all the electricity that's generated. The model looks more rock solid. Great. And then Octopus Energy said, tell you what, if you've got a business that's got more than one site in town, and maybe you're generating energy at one site and you're using energy at others, we'll let you have one single energy bill that spreads it out properly. So maybe you're generating an excess over here and you're only consuming over here. We'll let you do that. But we'll let you apply that generation to the use in the other site. So in effect, you're getting energy transmitted across the town at zero cost. And this is being used by an energy group in Wales who are sharing energy between a hydro scheme and 100 members of a business that's just a community energy co-op, right? All the members, the customers are, we're a business. One site's generating energy, 100 sites are using it. And what the customers are paying for the energy is what they're paying the hydro scheme. There's no transmission charges being lost. Brilliant. And then Octopus announced that they were basically, in effect, making this available to anybody. Great, we could do our solar roof scheme. So this is what I started telling Iris we could be doing. A community center could be the hub from which we build out solar energy across the community. and the community centre could have some of the capital that's being raised for that, and it could get some of the surpluses, so that the members of a community could be genuine members of a co-op that owns their community centre and is using that community centre as a resource to build resilience and be there in times of change. Great. So Iris was up for that. And I presented all of this in less than 10 minutes and showed this slide, which shows that there's room for 500 megawatts of solar on Bristol's roof. So just like they've got 4 megawatts of wind down at Avonmouth, and there's room for 100 times that on our roofs. So there's the possibility to have quite a big economic operation owned by the community, right? 2 days of, now this is the news, we've got time for it. 2 days after I showed these slides at this introductory event for the community hubs. Oh, and by the way, we've talked about this in the Quaker resilience group, sustainability group, and we're saying, well, all the Quaker meeting houses are community hubs. We should be joining in this initiative. And we've already got a minute going forward about that. 2 days later, I was talking to an old friend who's a businessman in Yorkshire. And he seemed very knowledgeable about Bristol. And he was telling me about all the things he was doing. He was director of a solar energy company, and he was part of an innovation hub for a university. And he had just raised £300 million for a social housing project. And I, you know, so what are you up to, David? This was a catch up after years. And so I showed him these slides, right? It was a Zoom call. And he said, hang on. And he gets the managing director of this solar energy company and says, show him your slides. So I show him my slides. And then he sort of pushes him aside and says, could you use 100 million for solar in Bristol?
Wow.
And my jaw dropped, right? And I spent a few days wondering if, you know, I had turned into the greedy Grinch and, you know, was thinking, you know, I was already planning my getaway to Jamaica. Right? You know, but no, it was, what could we use this responsibly for the community, and if so, how? And he kept sending me more and more materials, and oh, and this is the numbers, right? There's room for 500 megawatts of solar. The investment could be 300 or 400. So when he said 100 million, I'm thinking, well, we could absorb that. That's a doable number. It's, in fact, it's only a quarter of what we really need. But it would generate, well, 100 million would generate 10 million or so a year, and it would save 7 or 8 million a year in people's fuel bills. You know, this is quite exciting. Everybody gets solar panels for free, cheaper energy, surpluses to our hubs, and finances upgrades to our hubs. So that's what the story that I was telling the hubs. That's what I told my Yorkshire friend. And you know, that's comparing it with the wind numbers. I think that's pretty much the end there. Let's see what else. Oh, right, yeah. This is one more item of latest news from just 2 days ago.
Wow.
We all thought Xi Jinping sent messages to COP27 or something like that, saying China is going to attempt, we're not going to be carbon neutral by 2030, don't be ridiculous, but we're going to stop, emissions won't go up after 2030, and they'll start to come down. And Bloomberg are saying, well, guess what? It's not going to happen in 2030. The year when China's emissions start to decline is next year already. Because solar has been growing so fast, right? They're going to be putting up more solar energy than coal energy next year, and they've turned a curve, and emissions are going to start going down. That still means they're going to be adding to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere next year, but it had been accelerating, and it's going to be decelerating from there on. So things really are speeding up. And I keep having conversations with this friend in Yorkshire, I think, is this real? Basically, he's already organized some finance for businesses to get their own solar. And I'm saying, well, yeah, but, really looking for is not for the businesses to own their solar and get savings. We want the community to own it, and we need to do something with the energy company. This is the other bit of the story. How come this managing director of the energy company, how come you know so much about Bristol? Oh, we were the core technology that was needed for the number 2 bid in Bristol's City Leap competition.
Oh.
Right? So there's a company that won that's building a heat network for Bristol. And then there's another company that put in a bid, and we don't know what they were offering. But they were offering to invest in Bristol. And Bristol said, we'll do an exclusive deal with the winning bid. And suddenly I'm finding that I'm talking to a guy who's a director of one of the companies that was part of the number 2 bid, which is kind of sitting there with money burning a hole in their pocket that they were expecting to invest in Bristol. And I'm saying, well, you could invest it through the community. How about that? And they're going, ooh, that's an interesting thought, isn't it? And what would that mean? And we say, well, you wouldn't be able to do things on the council's estate if you were wanting to put solar up, but that's only 10% of the roofs. And if you were looking at the community's roofs, the council will have said, well, they can't guarantee that they could make community roofs available, but the community could. So I think that's the end of my story there, right? Yeah, I'm saying what we need to, now that we've got City Leap, we need to, I got slides all over. I'm going to stop sharing my slides before they go wonky all over the place. But this is the point, in January or February, I was saying things are going to take off this year. And it's not even halfway through the year. And I'm getting the chance to talk to a company that were the number 2 bid in City Leap and saying, we could help you do what you want to do. And I'm already talking to some of the councillors who are saying, well, you're the community. We can't stop you doing this. We wouldn't want to stop you doing this. That's interesting. We've got the streets and we can be putting a district heat network, but the community, well, those are all the people with the roofs. If you've got a solar project, and so suddenly, instead of thinking on the small scale of putting, suddenly I'm thinking that putting £1 million worth of solar on a business roof in Bristol is small scale, because somebody's saying. And yesterday I talked to this businessman in Yorkshire, and I'm, how real is this? And he said, well, I'm talking to another guy who's got 50,000, he's got social housing, 50,000 homes. And I'm talking to him about putting solar on them. That's 200 million, right?
Oh.
So, but I'd love to work with you in Bristol. Can you give me a couple of pages describing the project? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is from the beginning. I was saying in February things are going to take off this year, and it was a sort of like act of faith, but also just from my understanding of technology curves and how they go, and there was a time when I was sort of sitting there saying, Steve, when are you going to give us a phone? I want a phone, and then the iPhone came out. And it was like, oh God, we had to wait. Oh, it hasn't got GPS, or the camera's rubbish. But 10 years later, it's got everything, and the phones are wonderful. And now it's starting to be super intelligent. And I can write a proposal now, and I can give it to an artificial intelligence engine, and have it offer me suggestions. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So we're in this new world of being able to work faster together. You can almost imagine artificial intelligence being used to run a democracy by being in touch with everybody and knowing what everybody wants and asking them questions in their sort of daily chat, you know, and saying, well, hey, you're into education. What do you think about this? Or we've been working on some ideas about energy and we're thinking of doing this. So you could be holding informal citizens assemblies in real time, all the time, and so on. Anyway, that's me with, this is really an update rather than a presentation of new ideas. But I'm really, I'm still like all of us probably. I don't want to speak for you, but this is such crazy times that I go from, you know, deep, desperate worries about what's going on in the world and terrible sadness about the fighting and the slaughter and all those things, to real hope for humanity, as in, you know, this time we could come out of a war and all agree that was really stupid, and all agree that we've got to rebuild intelligently and make better futures for everybody. And owning our own energy supply so that we're no longer at the mercy of governments and vested interests is just one part of it. But, you know, it's an exercise. But by the way, I heard 2 days ago that one of the things a new Labour government would do is they would abolish the idea of councils buying land at market price. Councils would be able to buy land at the price of farmland and not at millions an acre like developers do. So councils would be able to build a truly affordable housing again. So there are other things going along that align with the idea of creating, you know, intelligent economies rather than rip-off economies. The damage that was done by Thatcher and Osborne and all those lovely, 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 well-meaning people who who were looking to make life better for everyone in their circle of friends can become, you know, wanting to make life better for everyone. So there you go. What do you think? Any questions? Any comments? Feel free to unmute.
That was great, David. Really, I thought it was utterly inspirational and quite reassuring as well. I've got a personal question. I originally was with Bristol Energy. I got moved on to British Gas. Would you suggest that it would be a good plan now to move on to Octopus?
That's such a lovely question, Patsy, you know, because, you know, when you talk to a group, everybody immediately thinks this is what I'm doing, you know, and I'm, you know,
Yeah.
if this is what's ahead of us, is that because ultimately, you know, a green forest comes from having planted and watered every tree. And so we do have to do this. We have to skill up to be able to answer questions. And sometimes it's a matter of, you know, well, just hang in there for a bit because things are changing very rapidly. But you can change energy companies anytime you like. So, I mean, the answer is have a look round, because if you have a look round, you're going to learn something. And in that learning something, you become part of the community's learning and shared learning. So I wouldn't say sit on your hands. I'd say, no, think about it. If you were asking, should I be buying solar panels right now? I'd say, well, hold on a bit, because we might figure out a way to do it all together. And if we do figure out a way to do it all together, you know, we'll for sure get a good discount on the price. So, you know, and our deal might be that we'll put it up for people and let them buy it, and have the community take a profit. You know, but the idea is to end up with a co-op where everybody is a member of the co-op who uses energy. And in effect, you've put a template in place for citizen democracy.
Yeah. And I think, you know, my first thoughts, it has to be for us, and us has to be not the 1% that I think in the last 10 years has been what the government thinks of as us, our kind of people. It's everyone. It's Bristol, or the whole area of Bristol. I mean, the complexity of Bristol, I understand, is in the next election there will be 5 constituencies, so there will be even more to fight for. And I think there's still areas of Bristol which are, I live on the edge of Loch Lees, and there's huge, what were council estates, and they are us. They are us. And I think so much of people's mindset sometimes is us, is middle class people like us. No, us is everyone. I'm not explaining myself very well, but I think it's following on from what I think underlies what you're saying.
Beautiful and absolutely right. I mean, the first time I got involved with renewable energy, it was easiest in my first experiment to put solar on Hamilton House in Stokes Croft, because I knew the owner of the building. It was a shortcut. But I was immediately thinking, I want to get solar for ordinary people. And for some reason, I was already thinking of Loch Lees, you know, not Clifton. I was thinking Loch Lees, council estate, Knoll West, whatever. Loch Lees actually, because it was a pilot project, I forget what they called them, in the government's plans for localism. And so there was chance to get, you know, a little bit extra help from the government one way or another. And I wrote to the Minister for Localism, who was Nick. Can't remember his name. I got a lovely letter from him saying that, you know, it's great that you're thinking about real communities, and I know it's not easy doing things like that. It was really encouraging letter, which featured in our business plan for putting solar in Loch Lees in 2011-12 or 12-13, which we did taking advantage of the feed-in tariffs that existed at the time, but always thinking that they wouldn't last forever. And there would come a time when just the economics of renewable energy would work, and we had to figure a way to make it work for everybody, as you say. And it ought to be easy, because people have got their own roofs, right? And if you start to do something in a mass movement, you're going to get your councillors behind you, and you're going to get the MPs with you, because you're working for their constituents. You know, you can more or less, I don't want to use the word blackmail, but you can entrain the local politicians because you're actually working for the community.
Yeah, but there are the issues of the areas in Bristol where there are very high tower blocks that have very real, you know, there's only one roof. So what they are us. They are us.
How lovely and how right, okay? The big tower blocks are the ones that are going to get cheap heat first through the district heating networks. So that's good in a way. And they don't have a lot of roof space for solar. But if you have this deal with Octopus that allows you to have one site generating and other sites using, then you can have solar farms around the edge of the city that are selling the electricity direct to people in tower blocks. So you can imagine the community owning solar farms as well, and wind farms up. And I have a project called H2O, which is an anti-nuclear project, and it's H is Hinckley, O is Oldbury, and I'm thinking of wind turbines all the way from Hinckley to Oldbury.
But you know, being a bit cynical, there's going to be a whole NIMBY movement, starting probably from all the wealthy parts of this city, that is going to use its considerable power to try and limit what us means.
Yeah. The exciting one of the things that works for us, of course, is you might suppose the people with loads of money say, we're going to corner the market in renewables. We're going to generate all the renewable energy. We're going to sell it, right? We're not going to give you a look in. We're going to make a profit. And that's one of the questions that they won't let us do it, will be a question that people raise. And they can put up all the renewable energy they like. As long as we've got roof space, we can say, yeah, put up all the renewable energy you like. We're going to put our own up and we're going to buy from ourselves. We're not going to buy yours. And all that will do is cause an excess of supply in the market, which will make energy cheaper for everybody, which is no bad thing. So, everybody will win a bit more. And surpluses of renewable energy for quite some time can go towards replacing the petrochemical industry, right? You can take a surplus of energy and put it in a battery, but you can also take a surplus of renewable electricity and make hydrogen with it. And hydrogen is a transportable fuel that can be used as a starter for chemical industries. In fact, hydrogen is used in large amounts in all kinds of industries. And we can start making it from renewable energy. So that's another aspect of decarbonizing the world energy economy.
There was a thing I saw on the net a little while ago, which someone suggested that solar panels should be put down the middle of motorways to generate energy from there, type of thing. The amount of motorways we have in England, if you can constantly do that, there's an enormous amount of power just there.
Right, and alongside the side of railway lines, they could even go between railway tracks. I mean, there's a lot of space there, and certainly in supermarket car parks, for instance, you can have car parking bays. Solar farms can be built with the panels raised on stilts. So you can still have animals grazing and crops growing beneath them. So yeah, there's all sorts of creative things that can be done with placement of solar panels that don't mean it's being used exclusively for something. Yeah, spot on.
You can actually imagine, can't you, railways, the trains running with no need for any power whatsoever, except that generated by solar panels beneath their wheels.
Yeah, there's
something like that.
There's a project called Riding Sunbeams, and one of the problems with solar energy, as with all new energy generation, is how do you connect to the grid? Right? How do I find my grid connection? And one of the biggest energy users in the country is the railway network. And it has its own energy transmission built in. So Riding Sunbeams is about building solar farms adjacent to railway tracks and using the electricity, putting the electricity straight into the railway network and so on. So there's a very creative group working on this out of Bristol University's law department, strangely enough. More and more people are getting in on the act in different and creative ways. We're starting like this idea from my friend who's offering funding. He's a deal maker. I don't think he would get upset if I described him as a sort of quintessential salesperson. He's just a wonderfully positive guy, and he's suddenly got the hang of solar energy is a thing that has passed a tipping point, and this is something that can be sold. And he delighted in explaining to me that they have a package for businesses, which is we provide the funding so that you are getting the you don't have to find the money, so that makes it easier to sell it.
David, I think Hattie wants to say something.
Okay, well, let me just finish this one thing, and then we'll come to hack out. I was wondering what you're doing with your hand. You were waving it in front of me, and he was saying it comes in an insurance wrapper. And I think, what is an insurance wrapper? You know, somebody who makes songs about insurance? I don't know, but it actually meant that the finance was insured. That was part of the cost. You were paying an insurance premium. And that sounds good from the point of view of the customer, but it's actually brilliant from the point of view of the salesman, because insurance salesmen get their commission up front. They don't have to wait every year for the commission. The insurance industry says, as soon as you sell it, you get your commission. So he's up and away. He's thinking, I can sell tons of this, right? And that's exciting in a way, because it means the finance industry is starting to come behind this. And he's saying, so what do you need for your community? And he understands that we have to structure a deal that works for everybody. Hattie, sorry. Have you got a question, or are you just waving your hand? We can't hear you. You're muted.
All right, then. Sorry, I have to hassle about in this sunlight on my mobile.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going backwards to what you said earlier about the Labour Party saying that councils could buy land at farm agricultural rate. I am concerned about that, because then who are they going to buy it off? Because landowners are pretty rich people and they love money.
Yeah. I'm guessing what it means is that councils used to have good planning departments that actually planned housing rather than just fought off applications for developers. My hope is that councils will start to plan, what do we need for housing? Where do we want to put it? Now let's buy that land at affordable rates and build housing that's truly affordable. So, and it may be that they're buying it off landowners, but they would be buying it certainly not at the same prices that, you know, a Wimpy or a Barrett would pay for building land. That I think is the key point. You know, they might still be paying a landowner, but they would be paying them something that allows the house to be affordable.
And I mean, have you had a conversation with Marvin Rees? Because, you know, considering that we have a Labour mayor, I know he's going to go, but, you know, somebody in the council's got to be on board with this and see a way through it, because landowners are just greedy.
Well, this is breaking news. I mean, this news only came out a couple of days ago, so
we've got to be careful.
I don't think there's anybody at the council thinking about this at the moment. But I mean,
no,
we've got to be intelligent in, you know, we don't really have democracy.
Yeah.
You know, we have elites pushing agendas and crushing people. We do have the opportunity. We've got an election coming up. Maybe we will be sensible enough to vote for more real democracy and start having the discussions that we need to have about health, housing, education, all of these things. You know, there isn't an area of life where we aren't doing things really badly at the moment.
Can I just add, we've got a Metro mayor, Dan Norris, who's Labour.
True.
I think he was a Labour MP in the distant past, but I think he's ambitious. Remember, we're going to have 5 constituents for the next election. But I think, Hattie, following up, I think he's the one to watch. He has got a brain, quite definitely. I mean, some of the problems with the present cabinet is they don't have any intelligence or brains. He has. I know that's a generalization. Sorry about that. But I think he is one to see what's he up to.
I think that's a really, really good comment, Angela.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would come back to that. We've got the opportunity to think on the regional level as well as the local city level. and things like renewable energy give us the opportunity to show that the communities aren't just at the end of the queue waiting for handouts. You know, we can start to go, if this comes off, we can go to an MP and say, you know, we're arranging £100 million worth of investment in your constituency. We, the community, do you want to sit down and talk to us? We've got things we need from a regulatory point of view in Whitehall. We don't want you going up there on Monday to be planning your retirement. We want you going up there on Monday to be organising the changed regulations that we need in order to make our cities work and lives work for the residents.
I've got another question, David. Are you working at all with SUSWAT?
With
SUSWAT, Sustainable Westbury Trim.
I'm afraid not.
Okay.
There are groups like this across the city.
Yes, there are.
But the idea is to set up this network of resilience hubs in the city,
yep.
so that groups like SUSWAT will strengthen their thinking around their hub, start to work more closely with their hub, because the hubs will be sort of the little fortresses that we're wanting to look to strengthen and be the centers of strength for bringing inward investment into every community. So,
and some staff at a hub will be paid for.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point. Once you sit down and think about, you know, what would the numbers look like, if you're talking about, you know, there is room for 500 million quid's worth of solar across the city. So if you look, for instance, at the old neighbor, you know, everybody says that neighborhood partnerships aren't there anymore. Well, they haven't gone away. They haven't moved, and they were often associated with a physical neighborhood that was more than a ward and less than a constituency. And if you divide 500 million between 14 neighborhoods, then that's, you know, you're talking about 30 million per neighborhood. That's, you know, 20 to 30 million per neighborhood. That's real money. At which point you could be putting, you know, 20 to 25 million on roofs and at least $1 million into the neighborhood hubs and centers, which could include, you know, I mean, I'm thinking that this new store Sparks in Broadmead, that's a community hub now, and some schools are community hubs, and so on. So, you know, we think, where are our strongholds? Where are our fortresses? Where does the community come together and do its thinking, sharing of food and ideas? And that includes our churches as well, our faith centers, our Quaker meeting houses. But some businesses as well. Some businesses are important in neighborhoods.
Fantastic, David. Thank you very much. Lots of good thinking there.
Good. Thank you. I really appreciate being able to, I mean, you are representative of the community, and the existence of this group creates the opportunity actually for all of us. Well, we've all done this, haven't we? We all find it useful to be able to come together with our friends and, you know, share our thinking with each other. It's an opportunity to focus our thinking. So I'm very happy to come to all that. I'm very happy to come to all your talks, and really happy that you've come to mine and shared your thinking
and excitement. I mean, it is wonderful to see the progress, David. Just over a year and a half.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, I was in February, my last talk, I say, you know, age of energy abundance. You know, I hope, I predict, and now I'm coming back and saying, my God, it's already happening. You know, guess what? I bumped into this businessman, and he's got a spare 100 million. burning a hole in his pocket.
Back pocket.
What can we do with it? Let's start to think about it. So there's some next steps, but one of the next steps would be us as a group of Quakers, as an area meeting, to be thinking what we can do with our hubs to be part of this initiative and to help bring this investment in.
That would be area meetings and all stuff like that, which is to be presented to the groups at area meeting, and that can actually then flow outwards, rather like a traditional Quaker concern moves out from the meeting itself to area meeting, to wider and wider and wider, up to yearly meeting.
Well,
someday you could be standing up at yearly meeting and doing your thing. So,
I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but it could still happen, I'll admit.
No. Because area meeting, because that yearly meeting a number of years ago had its whole yearly meeting on Quaker green concerns.
Yeah.
So, try not to wish for something because it could possibly come true.
Well, I used to come to Schumacher lectures in Bristol, but I also used to go to, out of which sprung an annual conference called Be the Change. And it was always held at Central Meeting on Euston Road. So, my first experience of Quaker Central was sustainability events held over the course of a few days every year. That I was it was an annual pilgrimage for me as I was gearing up to getting involved in. So, what goes round comes round. Good. So are we? Ray,
you're waiting for.
Ray dropped out. Right. So, Patsy, Ray's dropped out. You get to close us out then.
Okay. What happened to Ray? I didn't.
He had a glitch.
As of last week, I keep losing my connection again.
All right. Okay.
Right. Well, we're about done, right? So you're going to wind us up, Ray?
Yep. Right then. Well, that is another interesting morning has come to an end, my friends. But next week, we have something interesting for you again. We have deriding, who will be doing, speaking of a thing called divine ceremony. Everything you needed to know about death and dying.
Oh, okay.
Great.
She really is worth listening to.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
We're all going to go there, so we may as well make plans.
Well, if anybody sees, we've already had Dee Riding speak before, and you can find her talk in our cumulative playlist, a link to which appears between all of our Quaker Talk videos in the description.
Jolly good.
I remember a chap saying about money, and he said, if I can't take it with me, I'm not going. Anyway, have a good day, friends.
We'll see what Dee has to say about that.
Thank you.
I agree.
Everyone.
Thank you.